We're back with Colonel Tom Rempfer, who's been really instrumental in a lot of the, I guess, medical issues inside the Department of Defense. Tom, thanks for coming on, man. I know you're busy. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So you have some big news. We were talking before the show here, and some good things are happening. So explain to us what you mean by that.
Yeah, and as you know, my background was advocating for anthrax mandate era veterans. Our troops that were negatively impacted, adverse personnel actions, kicked out, jailed, less than honorable discharges, dishonorable discharges, over the anthrax vaccine mandate that ultimately both the Congress and the federal courts determined was illegal. So since that program was illegal, they should have corrected records for our troops, and they've only done it for just a handful of troops, correcting their records out of the thousands of people that were negatively impacted by the patently illegal anthrax vaccine program. And so, one thing, since that fiasco has been going on for literally over 25 years, you would think that the Department of Defense would have conducted some kind of after-action review, some kind of retrospective analysis of the lessons learned as a result of the patently illegal anthrax vaccine program. It never occurred. There was never an after-action report. They never said, hey, why did we do this? It was based on false premises, and we never learned lessons from it. And of course, that lack of retrospective analysis, that lack of after-action review led directly into the COVID era shot mandates and the fact that they once again implemented a patently illegal program for our troops because they never learned any lessons. So one thing that myself and a courageous group of COVID era veterans are trying to impress upon the Department of War is that we need to do an after action report this time. We need to go ahead and stand up a task force to not only do an after action report, but also to more expeditiously institute the corrections and the remedies and the reinstatements that the President of the United States has ordered. I mean, it's unprecedented what the new administration has put forth. Executive order by the President, directives by the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. They've said we need to fix it. And there's been some missteps. There's been some delay. But ultimately, a week or so ago, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness under Anthony Tata, and working the issue is retired Marine Corps officer Stuart Scheller, who works as the senior advisor to the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. And they actually sat down and they listened. They set up a meeting. I was grateful as an anthrax era veteran to be included because I think the lessons learned are very important. And I'm still hoping that the Department of Defense will correct records for our anthrax era veterans. But they actually set up this meeting in a historically unprecedented format. A group of COVID era veterans were in Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon, and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, came to the meeting and listened in. I was fortunate to be able to be a part of the meeting, and we expressed to the Secretary of War the importance to expedite the corrections for our troops, since almost none have occurred to date. Just a handful of troops have been reinstated, if that, and they listened. This listening session, as they termed it, was unprecedented. It's historically unprecedented for the Secretary of Defense to actually not only correct things in a proactive manner, but actually listen to the troops and say, "Hey, how can we do this better?" And so his message was very positive. The meeting was very positive. That they gave us the opportunity to speak to them, and I expect good things. I really do. I'm optimistic that they will end up standing up some kind of task force, end up ordering some kind of an after-action review. The most important thing is that they learn lessons from not only the anthrax vaccine mandate, which was patently illegal, but ask themselves the question culturally, from a behavioral standpoint, why did the situational ethics come into play that no after-action report was conducted on the anthrax vaccine program, which could have precluded the illegalities related to the COVID mandate? And then after they implemented an unlawful mandate with COVID, why, to date, have they done no after-action report? And that's so important. If you extrapolate this, into the future, it's so important that they now finally do the after-action report, learn the lessons, so that it's not repeated again. And so I'm very encouraged in that regard. It's a paradigm change. I'm hopeful that the Department of Defense, Department of War, will end up ordering some kind of strategic reset, rather than waiting for these bureaucratic, lethargic processes to play out with the corrections boards. Hopefully they will end up tasking a group of concerned veterans, current employees, to go ahead and expedite these corrections that to date have not gone well. And I want to throw out one case in point. There was just an article that broke today about a Army helicopter pilot whose case was finally remedied. Chief Warrant Officer 3, Brandon Budge, actually does have full justice at this point. He had been given a general officer memorandum of reprimand, and ultimately had a promotion rescinded, all related to the COVID mandate. And for years, literally, he's been trying to get that corrected. And he was on the verge of being discharged from the Army. And the Corrections Board did rescind the negative paperwork, but they didn't reinstate his retracted promotion. And it took the Office of the Secretary of the Army to step in and overrule the Corrections Board and provide this trooper justice. And so I'm grateful that they did that. But I want you to think about the process and why is it necessary for the Secretary of the Army to have to step in and overrule this legislated authority under the Corrections Board when they end up essentially promulgating arbitrary and capricious rulings, not giving service members full justice, which is exactly what both the President and the Secretary of War have ordered them to do, and they end up having to be overruled, which is unfortunate. But it's a case in point as to why a task force and why an after-action report should be done in order to try to expedite these corrections.
Well, I know it's not your purview and even your intention right now to focus on accountability, but let me just ask you, is there anything that you see that because these people in positions of power, that is personnel is policy, that has to change. Have you heard anything on that at all?
Yeah, I think that the accountability end of the spectrum, tends to be last. Now, I tend to be kind of altruistic, idealistic, and my thought is that full and fitting relief for our troops, correcting everybody's records, literally going back to a stake in time and saying, hey, as of this date, you were discharged, and now we're going to put you back on orders. We're going to disregard the lethargy of the bureaucracy, and we're just going to put you back on orders, put you back on pay status. And if for some reason you decide that you don't want to return to service to your country, we'll stop your orders and we'll just give you the back pay from the point that you were wrongfully discharged. That's the way to get the bureaucracy to start working, if you just put everybody back on orders. And I was encouraged that Undersecretary Tata actually seemed to articulate a similar concept. He called it snowbirding, the idea of going ahead and putting everybody back on status, overcoming the reality that people are being slow rolled right now. And you asked me a question earlier before we started filming, what's going on here? Is it incompetence or is it something, more sinister and intentionally trying to delay restoration, reconciliation, remedy for these troops? And in reality, I don't think it matters whether it's incompetency or whether it's actual intentional delay. The good news is if they just put everybody back on status, then ultimately our troops would end up being able to have justice. They could either decide to come back and have their career setbacks remedied. The Secretary of Defense has actually ordered that career setbacks be adjudicated, just like with this case of Chief Warrant Officer Budge. They're actually giving him his promotion. They're backdating it back to 2022 from when he was supposed to be promoted. So
is this to CW4? Is that what his promotion?
Yeah, he'll be a CW4. Exactly. Yeah. And he's going to get that back pay, and he's going to get that lost promotion. But that should be happening to literally almost 10,000 troops that the Department of Defense acknowledges were wrongfully discharged, and they want to offer them reinstatement. Put them back on orders. No better way to make the process start working than to just start everybody's pay again. And I guarantee you that if they were to do that, the bureaucracy would start acting very promptly to adjudicate these cases, to either give them assignments, give them their lost promotions, give them their back pay, or terminate their orders if they decide that they don't want to come back and serve, and just give them their back pay.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
But as you know, it impacted more than just those 10,000. There were almost 100,000 troops during the COVID era that were discharged, coerced into leaving over the COVID mandate. And with the anthrax vaccine mandate over 25 years ago, there were at least 1,000 troops that were punished over that mandate, which the courts and the Congress determined that mandate was illegal. And so it's just a matter of doing the right thing. They should go ahead and do the right thing for these troops, both in the anthrax era and the COVID era. Probably the best way to do that is to stand up an independent task force in order to expedite the remedies. With the anthrax era veterans, it's literally a zero cost calculus. All they have to do is upgrade their discharges, get the printer running, and send the discharges fully upgraded to fully honorable out to these troops that were, in some cases, imprisoned, given bad conduct discharges. Just give them upgraded discharges. As you know, one of the standards for upgrading discharges is simply the passage of time. With anthrax, it's been over 25 years. There's no reason not to correct these troops' discharges at this point. Give them fully honorable discharges. But in this case, we're talking about a program that was patently illegal. I want to give you another example of a case of another trooper, a Marine lieutenant. He was actually sentenced for over anthrax, over the anthrax mandate. He was sentenced to 8 months in the brig. And it took him literally over 20 years to get his discharge upgraded. So just this spring, there was a discharge upgrade under the Trump administration, and they have upgraded his discharge to fully honorable. They've done it to a couple other Marines also, but there's over 1,000 troops during the anthrax era that they've provided no justice for. And they've made no effort to proactively go back and correct the wrongs. These were wrongs perpetuated by the Department of Defense, and they should correct the records for these troops. It's zero cost. One of the arguments is, oh, it's too expensive, or we don't have the records. Under Title 10, Section 1178 of the U.S. Code, the Department of Defense back in 2003 with the National Defense Authorization Act was ordered to track anthrax punishments, refusals, and discharges. If they didn't do it, they should do it because it was ordered to be done by law. They should have the list. Start looking through that list and upgrade the discharges for those troops. The task force could also do this. It would be a simple administrative task, zero cost.
Wow. Well, totally agree with everything you say. I will just say that, we're about truth here in the DoD and fixing a lot of problems. And I would think that this behavior is a tell of other bad behaviors. So I would like to see some of these people held accountable, because that prevents it from happening in the future. I know that's not your words at all, but that's just coming from us. Anything else, Tom, that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, since you talked about the behavioral issues, I do think that is very important to be retroactively analyzed. In my book, Unyielding, and you've been gracious to promote that book in the past, all profits go to my dear colleague, Russ Dingle, who was the foundational, inspirational leader with respect to all of the arguments that found the anthrax vaccine program illegal. The book's attributed to him. All the profits from the book go to his wife. The book can be found at unyielding.org. In the book, and the forward for the book was done by Dr. Philip Zimbardo, basically a social behavior psychologist, and he talked about these types of issues, as did a more historic psychologist, Stanley Milgram. The reality that all too often, they say, with numbing regularity, people end up buckling to these situational ethics type scenarios, and they end up doing the wrong thing, bad behaviors.
Yes.
And they think that the senior leadership, those above them, support this, and they don't do the right thing. And so with both anthrax and with COVID, we have the same behavioral malfunctions, cultural malfunctions, where unfortunately senior leaders and all the way down the chain of command, they ended up buckling to the pressure. They coerced our troops into taking unapproved medical products. With both anthrax, the courts made this clear in an uncontested case, and with COVID, we had an unapproved medical product. With COVID, it was an emergency use authorized product, which was not produced according to the same regulatory standards as a normal FDA-approved product. The Department of Defense, before they even launched the mandate, knew that they only had an unapproved medical product for the troops. And the law, just like with anthrax, the law specifically stated that troops had to be given their prior consent or their informed consent, their option to accept or refuse. And the Department of Defense did not grant this right to our troops. They blatantly violated our troops' rights with both anthrax and with the COVID mandates. And so I think it's imperative that they not only go back and do the after-action report and thoroughly document that the programs were illegal. They knew they were illegal before they launched them. They did it anyway. They violated our troops' rights, but also analyze the cultural, the behavioral malfunctions that led to these illegal mandates in the first place, and those behavioral and cultural malfunctions that created a situation where over 25 years later, we still haven't done the after-action report with respect to anthrax, and they still haven't done an after-action report with respect to COVID, almost 5 years later. Any military operation that goes wrong normally has an after-action report, normally has a debrief. For some reasons, with these mandates for unapproved medical products, there's been no debrief. These mandates for unapproved medical products, unfortunately, hijacked military missions. It's like a submission. These unapproved medical product mandates have nothing to do with our missions, the domains of air, land, sea, cyber, or space. But unfortunately, the mandates hijacked the mission and actually negatively impacted the mission. And that's why we need to do an after-action report to try to get to the bottom of it and make sure it never happens again.
Well, there's something there for sure. I mean, I don't know if it's a uninformed consent clinical trial, if it's there's some agenda there that, we need to stop from happening again. I think that's the main point. Tom, thank you. Really appreciate your time, man. I know you're slammed, but thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Take care.